Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I will give a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. I'm still getting over a sinus infection. This is the third time I've tried to record this video because I keep going into coughing fits. But I'm just going to make it as fast as I can all the way through this version of the video, so that I can release it to you guys. So if I have to pause or if I mute or anything, it's so that you guys don't have to hear me coughing. But today we're going to be wrapping up Oedipus Rex, also known as Oedipus Tyrannus, or Oedipus the King. So we talked a little bit on Monday about Sophocles and about how in Athens and other Greek cities, they would celebrate these festivals with drama and comedy, as a way not only to entertain each other, but also as a way to honor the gods and the goddesses. And we're going to talk a little bit more today in depth about some of the elements of Greek tragedy that we have seen now that we've read Oedipus Rex. We can go back and kind of look at the things happening within the actual play and talk about some of those concepts that we introduced on Monday. And this slideshow comes from your textbook. So this was already made for me, which was nice to have. Um, so we've already talked about Sophocles. This is just a little reminder. Of course, one of the things that we did not talk about on Monday is the fact that Sophocles would have been affected by the Peloponnesian War. We're going to see some elements of the Peloponnesian War, or the aftermath of it rather, whenever we get into the Aeneid. But if you are familiar with the Trojan War, Helen of Troy, Achilles, all those different things, even though there was an actual Peloponnesian War, there's also a lot of mythos around it as well. But like I said, we went over Sophocles in more depth on Monday. Just remember that he was most likely from a wealthy family, very well educated, and was both an artist, a poet, and a politician as well. Uh, we talked a little bit about the three elements, or not three elements, but the three things that Aristotle said were needed: the unities of time, place. But there were other things that Aristotle said about poetics, especially when it came to tragedies. So one of the things is that tragedy, even though it was usually something that was made up. It didn't need to be something that was out of the realm of reality. And this doesn't mean that you can't have gods and goddesses and things that we think of as supernatural, but working within the realm of probability rather than possibility. Um, One of the main things I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to Aristotle and poetics is going to be catharsis. So, in order for a play or a tragedy to be successful, there should be some sort of outpouring of emotion or reaction from the audience at the end of the play. So, whether that is shock or pity or sadness or fear, some sort of reaction needs to be fed, needs to be met in order for it to be a successful piece of drama. And in modern terms, we usually think of catharsis as something that gives us a bunch of emotions. So if you watch a play or a movie that makes you cry, usually that's thought of as a cathartic response. There's also these six elements that he had when it came to different tragedies. So plot, character, language, thought, spectacle, and melody. Remember that the chorus was involved. A lot of this stuff was sang. So there were musical elements to this as well. A successful tragedy had to have a recognition and catharsis and reversal. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but this is kind of going to be the trajectory of the play. For it to be a tragedy, unfortunately, there is not a happy ending. That's going to be the difference between a tragedy and a comedy. And as I mentioned earlier, we did need to work within the realm of probability, even if it's something that's supernatural or we don't think is possible. We talked on Monday about the Deus Ex Machina. Just remember that is the God out of the machine. And of course, the chorus being an important part in the tragedy, kind of as a way to tell backstories or to talk to the audience. To break down those elements of the plot a little bit more in depth, there's going to be a part of the play that's called the anagnorisis. And this happens when usually the protagonist, is going to come to some sort of realization of maybe a truth they didn't know of before, something that's happening that was inevitable, um, that realization that something is going to change in their life. And usually after that recognition, there's a bit of catharsis, so a release of extreme emotions. The realization or the anagnorisis is going to come from the peripeteia. This is the reversal in fortune. And the peripeteia is going to come from the hemorrhagia, which is the mistake, also known as the fatal flaw or tragic flaw. So, usually in these plays, you have a hero, a protagonist that has some sort of fatal flaw, which causes recognition and reversal of fortune within the play. One of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about with Oedipus is one of the way that he becomes king of Colonus, or not, sorry, not Colonus, Thebes. He, we've read the play, so I'm not going to go over the entire plot point for you, but we find out kind of through these bits and pieces where we get the background information of the play that whenever he arrived, um, he was able to defeat the Sphinx that had kind of taken over the town and was kind of keeping the town hostage. And the Sphinx had a riddle that he had to solve. Um, and this is kind of a nice contrast for Oedipus, because Oedipus is this strong, kind of masculine entity, and the Sphinx is feminine, but also is showing these strong qualities as well. She's merciless, she's cunning, and also she is what we call a cryptid. So she's going to be a amalgamation of things to make kind of this new creature. She's part lion, part bird, and part woman. So that is how he ended up becoming the king. Kind of the main plot point of Oedipus is going to have to do with his adoption, right? So when Oedipus is born, his parents are told by the oracle that he will grow up to kill his um, father and marry his mother. So they expose him. This was actually a common practice back then. It was a way um, to trying to think of how to say this delicately, without having to actually murder a infant. It was a way to kind of get rid of it. That way you would not have that blood guilt. But this doesn't really work because a shepherd finds him and then he is taken to Corinth, where he's adopted by the king and queen. And we know from the story that he is then told later in life of the oracle's message, and he takes it as his adopted parents, and this is how we get into kind of the mess that we're in. One of the very interesting characters in the play is going to be Tiresias. He is blind physically, but he knows a lot more than people around him who can see. And he's kind of a foil for Oedipus, who can physically see, but is blind to the truth about what's actually going with him. And we see towards the end of the play where Oedipus is revealed the truth and accepts the truth and because of that makes himself physically blind. We had talked a little bit about how these plays are not set in Greek cities. They're not set in current times. And this could be a potential way to kind of not get in hot water with um, when it comes to politics and ruling class. However, if we look at Oedipus, we can still kind of see a political message, right? So one of the ways we can look at it is that Sophocles rather, is able to kind of give his viewpoint on democracy, right? Oedipus is kind of he's a king, right? He was not elected. Um, he came in, married the queen. He did defeat the Sphinx, um, but he rules as a king. He doesn't rule as a democratic leader, versus Creon, who is kind of more level-headed, um, and believes in following things by the letter of the law. Um, Both of these leaders are concerned for their people, just in different ways. We unfortunately did not get a chance to read Antigone. Antigone is the second part of these plays, so there's three different plays: um, Oedipus Tyrannus, Antigone, and then Oedipus at Colonus, which kind of follows the family through their kind of future issues having to deal with um, what has happened to Oedipus. And we kind of see different things going on with Oedipus and Creon as time goes on. We'll see it. You can see in Antigone. Definitely recommend reading Antigone. It's actually my favorite of the three plays, um, where Creon's observance of the law creates issue. And then there's kind of a resolve in Oedipus at Colonus, which, if I remember correctly, Oedipus at Colonus was actually written first, even though it's considered the third chronologically in the Oedipus tales. Even though they're not necessarily telling you kind of how to live your life, I guess, in these plays, there is usually some sort of moral or lesson. Usually it's spoken by the chorus, and the chorus is kind of thought to be speaking for the gods. And in this one, it's having to do with fate and how you need, trying to escape your fate, you can create, either get stuck with where you were in the first place or create even more problems. I'm going to be uploading this PowerPoint. If you want to take a look at these discussion questions, you can. This is not going to be your activity for the day. Your activity is going to be a quiz. If you read the play and watched this video, listened to the lectures, you should be good. I want to thank everybody again for being patient with me this week as I've been out sick. Um, and there is a timer on the quiz, but I'm going to allow for a couple of different attempts in case you get kicked off. I would recommend making sure you're in a place where you can rely on the internet 100%. We're going to be using the honor system for this quiz. Answer it based on your own knowledge. If you want to take some time to look back over the play or look back over the videos that I posted of the play, or listen to it again, or watch this video again before you take the quiz, you are welcome to do so. But once you are actually taking the quiz, you do not need to be looking at anything on the internet or searching for answers. I will see you guys on Monday. We are going to start the Aeneid. So go ahead and look at the schedule. And I believe it's book one of the Aeneid that we're going on over on Monday. So not a ton of reading, just the first book, because we're going to spend part of class also kind of talking about the Aeneid. It's a very interesting story about how the Aeneid came to be, and also maybe a little morally questionable, the fact that we read it and study it to this day. And we'll talk more about that on Monday. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me, and I will see you guys on Monday.